everyone, I'm Jenna and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the connection between IBD and anxiety. For those of you who don't know me, hit subscribe and stay around for my channel. I talk about life with Crohn's, but also gluten-free because I'm on a gluten-free diet. And I also run A Balanced Belly, which is a blog all about living with IBD and gut health. This is Stevie, who's going to just sit on my lap as I talk. And yeah, today I want to talk about the connection between IBD and mental health. I really feel strongly that it's not talked about enough. We do have kind of patient stories. People are starting to open up more about anxiety and IBD. But I also kind of want to share some facts about how common it can be and some kind of tips and suggestions that might help you. So I want to start off by saying that, get this right, yeah, if you've got Crohn's disease, you're 50% more likely to have anxiety or depression, and that is a pretty sobering fact. And it's really strange how this is not mentioned. This is something I only discovered last year when writing my book, and I feel really strongly that that should be mentioned more and that we should be talking about it when patients are diagnosed with Crohn's. Because there's many reasons why we might have mental health issues, whether it's temporarily or long lasting after such a diagnosis, and it's really frustrating about how doctors kind of don't take that in consideration. Now, the next thing I wanted to mention was a study. Now, this isn't product placement for my book. I do have a book, but the reason I'm picking it up is because I wrote this in my book and now I can't remember. So one second. I'll link the details to my book below if anyone's interested. Right. Yeah, so there's a really interesting study in 2009. So they surveyed a group of patients and their doctors, and they found that they asked the doctors and they said, to what extent do you feel as if a patient with ulcerative colitis can't live a normal life? And less than 40% of doctors felt as if having UC stopped patients from living a normal everyday life. However, when they asked those patients that the doctors took care of, over 60% of them felt as if they couldn't live a normal life. So for me, that's a massive disparity, and I think it shows that doctors really underestimate the everyday impact IBD has on our lives beyond the physical symptoms, and that mental health isn't even really a conversation that is brought into discussion when talking with patients about starting a new medication or surgery or treatment and so on. And it's something that I feel really needs to change. So those are a couple of facts. Let's think about why a patient with IBD might have mental health issues. And I think the first one is the way that we're diagnosed. Drawing briefly on my experiences, I was diagnosed when I was living abroad. Although I'd had symptoms for a long time, it was really abrupt. I was rushed to hospital after being sick in front of a group of parents because I used to be a teacher. So I just vomited in front of everybody. So that's the kind of classy person that I am. I was rushed to hospital and suddenly I'd got Crohn's. This is the medication I need to take. Here's a list of side effects. It was completely overwhelming, and I don't think I really digested it until much later. Often patients aren't given a support or even see a doctor for another couple of months. There's all that time where they've got these questions and they've got these concerns and they aren't able to necessarily voice them. And obviously in itself, having a colonoscopy is just such an invasive, humiliating procedure that in itself is going to cause anxiety. For me, how the anxiety started to materialise was I just started to have really bad health anxiety, and I guess it's pretty normal when I think about the way I was diagnosed, but I was just very conscious of symptoms and side effects. My doctor had told me, you know, if you have these side effects, then call this number and speak to me. And all of a sudden, my brain was very tuned into hyper vigilant of any symptoms I would have. And I guess, to be honest, that's something I still have today. If I see something on the television and, you know, about a new illness or new side effects, I'm suddenly thinking, is that me? Is that me? And also, I felt like I couldn't trust the doctors. I'd had symptoms of IBD for 12 years, so it's really hard to trust the doctors when you were misdiagnosed before. And I think if you can't trust the doctors, then you don't get that reassurance. You know, if you've got a niggle about your health and the doctor says don't worry, you think, wow, you said that last time and look at me now. So it's really hard, and I think that's a normal kind of reaction, but at the same time it's really hard to live with. And I think another aspect of it is you do feel really angry, and your relationships can kind of change, and the way, you know, things like socialising and travelling, it does have a really big impact on your life. And I think it's perfectly understandable why so many of us would naturally have anxiety or worry and symptoms and periods of depression because of that. I thought it would be interesting to just note a few other reasons, because I do talk a bit about nutrition on my channel and my blog, and there are a couple of nutrition deficiencies that can sometimes present themselves, or exacerbate, that can sometimes present themselves as mental health issues. So vitamin D, for example, is known to cause low moods. So there was a study that looked at depressed patients, not with IBD but in general, and found that vitamin D was lower. And there's a huge connection with vitamin D and IBD. Too long to talk about in this video, so I'll link a blog post that I wrote on it. But so it's definitely worth getting your vitamin D levels checked. And also B12 is another vitamin we tend to be deficient in, and it's also linked to anxiety. So I guess it's also worth knowing that there could be other causes for low moods and so on, and to check those nutrition deficiencies out. There is a little bit of research that's looking at how our brain and our gut bacteria are connected, and suggesting that patients who are depressed will have certain mental illnesses, have a different gut bacteria, but I feel like that's way too long to talk about today. But there are certainly lots and lots of different reasons as to why an IBD patient might have mental health issues. I guess what's left is to kind of share things that have helped me. I'm conscious that my journey isn't representative of everyone's journey, and also perhaps my experiences with anxiety aren't as acute as other people, so I don't want to kind of come across as like follow my advice. But what really helped me to an extent was cognitive behavioural therapy, so I thought it would be important to talk about that. I found that a lot of my issues with anxiety came from really negative thoughts and the way I perceived everything. And you know, for example, if there was like an event that I had to go to, my perception was I'm a bird and I'm going to be putting people out when I'm talking about what I need to eat. It's just too much hassle. I'd rather just stop in. And it kind of teaches you CBD to kind of reframe that as more realistic thoughts. And I think that was something that's only just recently where I've had a more positive outlook than I used to have. And you know, I've realised I used to get really anxious around, you know, going out with people, and I think I've learned to kind of put my needs first, and I think I'm pretty good at doing that now, but that really does take time. Things that help me are meditation apps as well. To be honest, I don't use them very often, but on Headspace there's a button called SOS. Headspace is a meditation app, and there's a button on there, it's like a 3-minute meditation, and that's really good when you're just feeling really panicky. I'll play that. So that's really helped as well, but it is every day. It's every day at a time, and I'll be honest to say today I don't feel anxious, and that's why I'm filming this video. There are some amazing vloggers who pick up the camera, like Hattie Gladwell, who are really raw and genuine and say I'm anxious today and this is what it looks like. This isn't that video. If I was anxious I wouldn't be filming it. That's not my thing. So I think my journey is very different to everyone else, and I just wanted it to be kind of an overview video. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, those are some tips and suggestions about anxiety and Crohn's disease. I think it's really important that we just start talking about it, and there's loads of Facebook groups now. I run a Facebook group which I'll link below, but there's tons, and just talking about it, you don't have to pick up the camera like me, just joining a group and opening up, you will realise how common it is. And I don't want to change the world with this video, I just want people to realise it's common and we need to talk about it, and our doctors need to be talking about it, and if we can achieve that I'll be really chuffed. So I hope you like the video. Please stick around because I'm planning lots more Crohn's content, so hit subscribe. Let me know if it's helped you, let me know what you'd like me to tackle. I'd like to do a video on fistulas because that is something that isn't talked about, and definitely is probably one of the worst periods in my anxiety and my journey on IBD, so I'd really like to talk about it. But yeah, other than that, stay around, give my blog a read and keep in touch.